Okay, so we are starting this 6th May newspaper reading, The Hindu. Here that is Maratha quota, that is the news, also the RBI measures, also workers income report and COVID-19 varieties and cocktail and CT scans. So as we know that Maratha quota is an unconstitutional Maratha quota is basically unconstitutional, violate rights to equality basically. That is said by the Supreme Court. Here is no exceptional circumstances in Maharashtra to break 50% ceiling limit, bench said, because it is there that in the exceptional circumstances, Supreme Court can break the ceiling limit of 50%. That has been held as a judgment in Indira Sahani case, which we also know that Mendel Commission. So now we know that the 5-judge Constitution bench of the Supreme Court on Wednesday unanimously declared that Maharashtra law, which provides reservation benefit to the Maratha community, taking the quota limit in the state in excess of 50%, unconstitutional. Now the bench led by the Justice Ashok Bhushan, who found there was no exceptional circumstances or extraordinary situation in Maharashtra which require the state to go beyond the ceiling limit, which is 50%, to bestow quota benefit to the Maratha community. So we have found that no extraordinary circumstances were made out in granting separate reservation for the Maratha community by exceeding the 50% ceiling limit of the reservation. So now we know that the Marathas are in the mainstream of the national life. It is not even disputed that the Marathas are a political dominant case, or that a legal opinion of the point of the validity of the Maratha law noted. Now here it is set aside High Court verdict, that is the Supreme Court struck down the findings of the Justice M.G. Gaikwad Commission, which led to the enactment of the Maratha quota law, and it set aside the Bombay High Court judgment which validated the Maharashtra State Reservation for Socially and Educationally Backward Act of 2018. Now the High Court in the June 2019 reduced the quantum of reservation for Marathas from 16% recommendation by the Gaikwad Commission to 12% in the education and 13% in employment. Okay, so now the Supreme Court concluded that even the reduced percentage were ultra vires. In fact, the Supreme Court held that a separate reservation for the Maratha community violate Article 14, that is right to equality, and also that is 21, that is due process of law. So now most important, the top court declined to revisit its 1992 Indira Sahani judgment, which fixed the reservation limit at 50%. Now the judgment of the Indira Sahani has stood the test of the time and has never been doubted by any judgment of this court. Now the Justice Bhushan wrote that the ceiling of 50% with the extraordinary circumstances exception is the just balance, what is termed as the Goldilocks solution. That is a solution containing the right balance that allow the state sufficient latitude to ensure meaningful affirmative action to those who deserve it, and at the same time ensures that the essential content of equality, that is Justice S. Rabindra Bhatt on bench agreed. Now here is, we know that against excess, we know that in the Maratha case what has happened, that Supreme Court held fast to quota ceiling and required special reason to exceed it. So I am striking down that the separate reservation given to Maratha community. Now the Supreme Court has underscored the importance of the adhering to 50% limit of the total reservation, as well as the need of justify any excess by showing the existence of the exceptional circumstances in the decision that will be quite unpalatable to mainstream parties. Now the court has not only found no merit in the Maratha claim to backwardness, but also said the community is adequately represented in public services. Now, it is no surprise that the Maratha quota given by Maharashtra through a 2018 law did not survive judicial scrutiny by the Constitutional Bench. Now, the 16% quota in admission to educational institutions and the jobs in public service later brought down to 12% in the admission and 13% in jobs. Through a 2019 amendment, took the total reservation in the state beyond the 50% ceiling imposed by the earlier verdicts. Now, the judges bench has held that state has not shown any exceptional circumstances to justify exceeding the limit. The Bombay High Court had upheld the validity of the Maharashtra reservation in principle, but ruled that the law could not have fixed the percentage above what was recommended by the State Backwardness Commission headed by M.G. Gaikwad. Now, the court has now set aside its ruling and rejecting the High Court reasoning that the denial of backwardness status to the Marathas had pushed them deeper into social and educational backwardness, and that is constituted as special circumstance in support of their claim to separate reservation. Now, if we talk about in detail, like the Maratha quota unconstitutional, that is violate the right to equality, that is said by the Supreme Court, that Maratha reservation contained, there is a content like a judge constitution bench of Supreme Court declared that Maharashtra law that provides reservation benefit to the Marathas community access to 50% reservation unconstitutional. Background is that examining constitutional validity of the Maratha reservation, Supreme Court says that it will look into whether the landmark 1992 decision, that is Indira Sahni versus Union of India, needs to be revisited. Okay, and also the challenges are like main constitutional question that whether states can declare a particular caste according to social and educational backwardness, and whether states can breach 50% ceiling limit for vertical quota set by the Supreme Court. Now, the history is that 1979 what has happened. Second backward class commission, that is Mandal Commission, was set up to determine the criteria for defining social and economical backwardness of the classes, and report is it identified 52% of the population that is social and economically backward, and recommended 27% reservation of the social and economically backward in addition to previously existing 22.5% reservation for SCs and SC community. Now, there is VP Singh government, which is in 1990, that is set out to implement Mandal report, and challenges upheld 27% of the quota, that is social and educational backwardness, and that is OBC, that is a creamy layer, should be excluded, and total reservation should not exceed 50% of the 15% limit except some extraordinary circumstances. So here Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu crossed reservation over 60%. So Tamil Nadu case, that state assembly passed Tamil Nadu backward classes SC ST reservation of the seats in educational institution and appointment or post on service under the State Act 1993, and they keep reservation hint at 69%. Now, Maratha quota law, that is Bombay High Court in June 2019, that is reduced the quantum of reservation for Maratha from 16% now recommended by Gaikwad Commission, that is 12% and 13% educational employment by implementation of Maharashtra law. Maharashtra later that the vertical quota in state could go up to 68% earlier, and 52% court have to test whether the Maharashtra law qualifies to be an exception. Now, the Supreme Court finding is that no extraordinary circumstances were made out in granting separate reservation. Also, Maratha mainstream of national life, political dominant caste. Now, it is political dominant caste here, not the social and educational backward. Now, here is the struck down findings of Justice M.G. Gaikwad Commission that has led to the enactment of the Maharashtra quota. It kept aside Bombay High Court judgment and violated the Maharashtra state reservation for SCs and social and educational backward classes, that is SEBC Act of 2018. So what has happened here, that Supreme Court separate reservation Maratha community here violates Act Article 14 and also Article 21. So through this Maratha community which violate which article, right, Article 14 and Article 21, that is right to life and right to equality. Now if we talk about another article, that is RBI steps in to ease COVID-19 burden. So RBI has to step in this case. Now it for health sector and small borrowers. With India's economic recovery threatened by the second COVID-19 wave, now the Reserve Bank of India stepped in on Wednesday with the measures aimed for alleviating any financing constraint for healthcare infrastructure and services, as well as small borrowers who may be facing distress due to sudden spike in health expenditure. Now RBI Governor Shakti Kantas used an unscheduled address to announce a term liquidity facility of 50,000 crores with tenure of up to 3 years at a repo rate of to ease access to credit for providers to emergency health services. Now under the scheme, banks will provide fresh lending support to a wide range of entities including vaccines manufacturers, importers, suppliers of vaccines, and also priority medical devices, hospital dispensary, pathology labs, and manufacturing and suppliers of oxygen and ventilators. Now and logistics, these loans will continue to be classified under priority sector till repayment of majority whichever is earlier. Now Mr. Shaktikant said. Now we have small businesses and MSMEs to get relief here. That RBI also, it is the same article, but let's read it again. That what is the eligibility criteria? Now we have already had a little bit understanding of this. So RBI steps in this case and aid for the health sector and small borrowers. Now the content is the second wave that threatened to economic recovery and RBI measures. Now it's aimed to eliminating any financing constraint, healthcare, small borrowers facing distress due to sudden spike in health expenditures. Also detail is like RBI announced a term liquidity facility that is 2,50,000 crore tenure 3 years at a repo rate to ease access to the credit for healthcare providers. Also support to a wide range of entities, vaccine manufacturers, also the pathology labs, manufacture and supply of oxygen ventilators, importers and suppliers of the vaccines, priority medical devices, hospital dispensaries. Here small businesses, that is second waves, MSA that is small and medium enterprises, that is individual borrowers, adverse impact, RBI, that is resolution framework 2.0, that is recommend to save human lives and restore livelihood. Now details is it basically to support to the small businesses unit, microfinance and small industries and other unorganized sector, special long-term 3 years repo operations. Also who had not availed restructuring frameworks, those loans whose loans were classified as standards as on March 31st 2021, eligible for restructuring under the proposed framework. Also significance is to help to better management of fiscal situation, that is cash flow, market borrowings, maximum number of days of overdraft. Now we have workers' income fell by 17%, that is said by the report. Here is that COVID-19 pandemic has substantially increased informality in employment and leading to decline of earning of the majority of workers and consequent increase in the poverty in the country. And according to the States of Working India, that is 2021, 1 year of the COVID-19, a report brought out annually by Azim Premji, that is University Center for Sustainable Employment, Bengaluru. This year report, which covers the period from March 2020 to December 2020, it dwells the impact of 1 year of COVID-19 on employment, incomes and inequality and poverty. If we talk about that is 100 million jobs, that is regarding employment, the report noted that 100 million jobs were lost nationwide during the April-May 2020. Now through lockdown. Now though most of these workers had found employment by June 2020, about 15 million remained out of work. Now as for the income for an average household for of 4 members, the monthly per capita income in October is 4,979, approximately 5,000, was still below its level in January 2020, that is 5,900. The report that has noted here, the study found that the post-lockdown, nearly half of the salaried workers have moved into informal work, either as a self-employment 30%, casual wages 10%, and informal salary, that is 9%, and the fallback option varied by caste and religion. Now, the general category workers and Hindu were more likely to move into self-employment, while marginalized caste worker and Muslims moved into daily wage worker. That has been noted by the report. If we talk about educational, health and professional services, that saw highest exodus of workers into other sectors, with agriculture, constructions and petty trade emerging as the top fallback options. If we talk about due to employment and income losses, the labor share of the GDP fell by 5% point from 32.5% in the second quarter of 2019 to 2020 to 27%. Now it has from 32% it comes to 27% in the second quarter of 2020 to 2021. Of the decline of the income, 90% was due to reduction in earnings, while 10% was due to loss of employment. Now this means that even though most workers were able to go back to the work, they had to settle for lower earnings. Observe the reports. Now the monthly earnings of worker fell on an average by 17% during the pandemic, with self-employment and informal salaried workers facing the highest loss of earnings. Now, while the poorest 20% of the household lost their entire incomes in April-May 2020, now the richer households suffered losses of less than a quarter of their pre-pandemic incomes. Now, during the period from March to October 2020, an average household in the bottom 10% lost 15,700 or just over 2 months income. Significantly, the study has found a clear correlation between job losses and also COVID-19 cases load, with states showing higher cases such as Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Delhi, and that is contributing disproportionately to the job losses. If we talk about women and younger workers were more affected by the pandemic related measures during the lockdown, and in the post-lockdown months, 61% of the working men remained employed, while 7% lost their job and did not return to work. But in case of a woman, only 19% remain employed, while 47% suffer a permanent job loss, not returning to work even by the end of 2020. If we talk about with 230 million falling below the national minimum wage threshold of 375 rupees per day during the pandemic, poverty rate has increased by 15% point in rural and nearly 20% point in urban areas. Now the report said that household coped with the loss of income by decreasing their food intake, also selling assets and borrowing formally from friends, relatives and moneylenders. So the report noted that 20% of those surveyed said that the food intake has not improved even 6 months after the lockdown. Now these findings are a serious cause of concern in the absence of an inclusive social welfare architecture. Among the ameliorative policy measure, now the report called for extending free rations under the public distribution system till the end of 2021. Also expansion of Manrega entitlement from 100 days to 150 days, and COVID heart-shaped allowance for 2.5 million Anganwadis and Asha workers. So we have the report, gist of this report, that is workers income fall by 17%, that is said by the report. And workers income context, if we talk about that state of working India, that is 2021, 1 year of COVID-19, that is a report by the Azim Premji University Center for Sustainable Employment, Bengaluru. That report has said the 2021 report period from March to December, that It basically dwells impact of 1 year of the COVID-19 on employment, on income and quality, and also the poverty. If we talk about COVID-19, it is informality in employment and also in earning of the majority of workers and consequent increase in poverty. If we talk about highlights of the report, that is employment, here 100 million jobs were lost nationwide from April to May during lockdown period, and also monthly per capita income for an average household for 4 men to October, that is means that has been reduced by 1,000 rupees, if you know, and most of these workers have found employed by June. About 15 million remained out of her, and half of the salaried worker moved into informal work, that is self-employed, casual work, informal, salaried, and the impact is on education, health, and professional services, that is moved. Basically they moved to into agriculture, construction, and also petty trade emerging. If we talk about the significance, is that employment losses and income losses, that labor share of GDP. Also the reduction in earnings monthly fell by average of 17%, that is food intake. They are selling their assets and they are borrowing informally from the friends, relative, and money lenders. If we talk about that 20% of the household lost their entire income in April and May, correlation between job losses and the COVID-19 cases load, higher case load, that is in UP, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Delhi, job losses are high. If we talk about way forward, that is need is to social welfare architecture, that is expansion of Manrega entitlement up to 150 days, also free ration under PDs and COVID hardship allowance, that is 2.5 million Anganwadis and ASHA workers. There is INSA cause shared inputs on variants. Here is that the warning of COVID-19 cases surge due to mutant conveyed to government, say scientists. Here the Indian SARS-CoV-2 genome sequence consortium of scientists spanning 100 labs across the country and involved in the sequencing genome to coronavirus samples in different states, and had been giving regular updates on the threat from new strains to the government, said by a senior member to the group. Now if you talk about that, the Indian SARS-CoV-2 genome sequencing consortium of scientists, Indian SARS-CoV-2 genome. Okay. Members have meeting every alternate day, whatever be the results of analysis that emerge from the threat posed by a new strain is shared with the National Center for Disease Control and being a health ministry, that is by the body, is naturally shared with the government. And also Rakesh Mishra, the advisor of the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Hyderabad, told the Hindu that Mr. Mishra, that is retired as the institute director in April and since has been a scientific advisor there. This system has been in place for most of the year this year since the INSOC system has been put in place, he said in an interview to the news portal, that is The Wire, on Tuesday, that Dr. Mishra said that warning of an increase in cases of the increased prevalence of new variant were conveyed to the government channels that eventually could likely not have made their ways to the Prime Minister's office. At a press meetings on Wednesday, Health Ministry officials said the information of genome sequencing had been shared with state twice in February 2021, 4 times in March 2021, and again 4 times in April. In video conferencing with state, the Union Health Ministry said it was informed about the current situation of new variant of concern and new mutants and stressed on increased and stringent public health interventions. So the current surge in cases could be correlated with the rise in the B1617 lineage of SARS-CoV-2, popularly known as Indian variant of coronavirus, that is said by the officials. And Dr. Mishra, in response to the question from The Wire, agreed that the Indian political leadership should have been more communicative about the risk that events such as political rallies and religious gathering posed in a way of crowding and transmission of newer infection variants getting magnified. Here, if we talk about the Indian SARS-CoV-2 genome sequencing consortium shared inputs on variants and COVID-19 variants context. If we talk about that Indian SARS-CoV-2 genome Indian gene consortia, that is 10 labs across the country. It has 10 labs across the country and sequencing of genome of coronavirus samples. Now it gave regular updates on the threat from new strain to the government. If we talk about the details, that is current surge could be correlated with the rise of B1617 lineage of SARS-CoV-2. Now Indian variant of coronavirus, that is facts here is that it comprises of 10 laboratories. Purpose is to whole genome sequencing and the objective is to find current status of new variant of SARS-CoV-2 in India and also to establish a sentimental surveillance in order to detect the genome variant early in the public health implications, also to determine the genomic variant in usual events trend, that is super spreaders event and also high mortality mobility trend areas. If we talk about, we have two articles to be discussed. So 2 articles we need to discuss and we need to record here in another video. Thank you.